All right, so as the season starts to wind down for a lot of teams around the NHL, we're going to take a look at the top 5 trade candidates on the board right now. We'll be taking a look at those guys in this video. If you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to see the latest news around the NHL, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below and help us get to 500 subscribers. So make sure you subscribe if you have not already. Let's get right into the video. All right, so the top 5 trade bait on the board at this point is kind of interesting. I think a lot of people have differing opinions on who could be in the top 5. So if I leave out a guy, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Who do you think should be in the top 5, or a guy that you think should be traded off of your team? Let me know down below. Make sure to check out our Instagram as well at goalline_hockey. We've been doing a story and stuff like that after games and post game, so make sure to check that content out as well. Really for the most up-to-date news around the league. All right, so now let's get into this. So at number 5, I'm looking up at the Philadelphia Flyers. The Philadelphia Flyers have some interesting moves they're going to have to make this offseason. They have a couple of pending unrestricted or restricted free agents. Guys like Justin Braun come to mind. Which I think is good because he takes up $4 million in cap space, so I think that's a good thing. You also have guys like Robert Hagg and Philip Myers who are on expiring deals. They're probably not going to command too much, but I think at this point Robert Hagg would probably look between $2 and $3 million in his next contract. Philip Myers maybe between one to 2.5, something like that for Philip Myers. So that salary cap's going to be taken away once Justin Braun leaves. They're going to just spend that on probably those 2 young defensemen. So the Flyers have, a couple of young defensemen here. They could maybe move out a guy like Shane Gostisbehere. Gostisbehere still has 4 years on a $4.5 million contract. I think they're going to try and eliminate that. I think they're going to try and move him somewhere. The thing that I think the Flyers could use in a deal for Gostisbehere, they want to add a little more depth up front. They could maybe look at, a guy up in Montreal. I think a guy in Montreal like Max Domi, who may or may not be on this board as well. I think that would be a good fit for the Flyers, a guy that's a hard-nosed player, an agitator. I've always seen Max Domi as a guy that could play on the Philadelphia Flyers, so a Gostisbehere for Domi kind of trade, could that work? That's something that we'll have to wait and see, right? But I could potentially see that happening. So now we move on to number 4, and that is from the Montreal Canadiens, Max Domi. Max Domi is one of those guys that's kind of interesting because the way he's bounced around the league, he was with the Arizona Coyotes, things didn't really work out. Now he's in Montreal in that Galchenyuk trade. So the Montreal Canadiens, who have a little over $4 million in cap space, they're obviously having some issues with Max Domi and his contract situation. He's making a little over $3 million this season. He is a restricted free agent this offseason. He just got a new agent in general. So there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. And just to remember, his old agent was Pat Brisson. His new agent is Darren Ferris, who, if you remember a couple of years back with the whole Mitch Marner situation, that's a guy that's loved around the league. So definitely an interesting move there by Max Domi, and it makes you wonder that there may be a little bit of a rift between the Canadiens and Max Domi, or maybe not. Maybe he just wants to get the most money he can. He struggled this season in a contract year, which is never good, and this could have been his chance to make bank. He's 25 years old. This would have been maybe his contract he takes to his prime, another, maybe a 5 or 6 year deal till he's in his 30s. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Maybe it happens, but I think it's very unlikely at this point. So we'll see what happens with Domi. The Flyers could use, a defenseman, and that's why I thought the Flyers would be a good fit. A Domi for Gostisbehere deal could work, I think, in a lot of scenarios. I think it makes sense. The Canadiens want to bolster up their defense, and the Habs, who want to add more offense, they lose Domi in this, but they can maybe look elsewhere to add another forward. They could do that in a potential trade. So let's move on. So at number 5 we have Shane Gostisbehere. Number 4 we have Max Domi, and at number 3, this one may surprise some of you because he's a guy that he's playing with the New Jersey Devils. He's kind of not talked about as much right now because of the lack of success the Devils have had the past couple of seasons. But this is a guy that I think he's underrated. And if making it at 4.650 the past couple of years, Kyle Palmieri, I think this is a great player for the New Jersey Devils. He's not anywhere as valuable as he was, but remember, he's still only 29 years old. He's in his prime, and the New Jersey Devils see him. He's got one more year on his contract, so next summer he will be a unrestricted free agent. So, the New Jersey Devils may be looking long term here. Do they really see Palmieri in their future? He's from the New Jersey area. That's why the Devils traded for him, which it would be a shame if he left the Devils. But that's how business works sometimes. So, the Devils are another team that I could see making a move. I don't see them trying to go after a guy like Gostisbehere. I think they head to the West Coast in a Palmieri trade. Maybe even the Boston Bruins. We know a couple years back they were interested in Kyle Palmieri. So maybe you move, maybe you try and pick up one of those defensemen that the Bruins have, and a guy like Zaboral or Lazar or one of those guys. They try and pick one of those guys up, Jarmo Kekalainen, maybe in a deal for Kyle Palmieri to add to that blue line, because the Devils' blue line has definitely struggled, and that's been a big reason why they are where they are. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. And the big thing with the Devils, they have a ton of cap space, $8.6 million. So they have the most cap space in the NHL right now. So we're going to see how this plays out for the Devils. They could maybe try and get a cap dump and a move with the Boston Bruins as well. Maybe we see a big trade come from that, but we'll see what happens, right? Anything can happen. All right, so now we've got number 2. So we got at number 5, Shane Gostisbehere. Number 4, Max Domi. Number 3, we have Kyle Palmieri. And at number 2, we're heading to St. Louis. As the St. Louis Blues, I think, have, they made the Jake Allen trade, which is just the start of the moves they're going to be making. They need to make a couple of trades because they need to clear out some cap space. They are going to keep Alex Pietrangelo. I wholeheartedly believe they will keep Pietrangelo. He's going to test the market, though, because at this point he's already so far into it. I think he'll at least interview with other teams, try and use that leverage that he has. But I think ultimately Pietrangelo will stay with the St. Louis Blues. They have $1.745 million in cap space. So they don't have a ton of cap space, and I think the defenseman that has to go for the St. Louis Blues here is Vince Dunn. Vince Dunn, he's on a ELC contract right now. He's making $722,000. He's not going to be making that next season. Spoiler alert. He's a restricted free agent. He's 23 years old, so this is a good asset that a team could be looking at. And I look at the New Jersey Devils as a team that could be a player in a guy like Vince Dunn. Maybe even the New York Rangers. A couple of teams around the league. Even Boston, if they lose guys like Krug, even the Boston Bruins could be in on a guy like Vince Dunn. So I think this is an interesting situation for the St. Louis Blues. I think it's a guy they don't want to let go. He's on that nice, cheap contract, but the salary cap catches up with you. You win the Stanley Cup. Unfortunately, things have to happen. So the Blues, I think, are going to move on from Vince Dunn. He's a really solid top 4 defenseman at the NHL level, and maybe even more potential than that. But we'll have to wait and see how that works out. So then the number 1 guy on the list. And I don't think anybody's going to be too surprised. I've already talked about guys like Matt Murray and Frederik Andersen. I'm not even looking at guys like Mitch Marner or William Nylander or Oliver Ekman-Larsson. I'm not even looking at those guys because I just think it would take a real big trade for that to even be a consideration. So, being more realistic, the number 1 guy up in Winnipeg, and we've been talking about this for the past 2 years. Ever since I really started this channel, we've been talking about Patrik Laine. When is Patrik Laine going to get traded? He was going to go to the Montreal Canadiens. He was going to go to the Toronto Maple Leafs. He was going to go to Buffalo Sabres. He was going to go everywhere. So I think this is the offseason where the Winnipeg Jets move Patrik Laine. And especially with how things went this season, they need some, it's one of those things because, you're a little under $4 million in cap space. They're in a spot where Patrik Laine has not been producing enough. Whether that's because of off-ice issues, because he's playing too many video games, or whatever other stuff, which I'm not even going to get into, but there's stuff off the ice that I think is going on with Patrik Laine in Winnipeg. I think he needs a new scenery. A team that I think would be the most interesting to see go after Patrick Laine is a team like the Buffalo Sabres. Now, hear me out. We saw this kind of trade a couple of years back, right, with the Tyler Myers, Tyler Ennis trade. I think there's something to this because you're looking at a situation where you could maybe, because you've got Patrick Laine, right? And Winnipeg Jet fans have been telling me, we need another center. We need another center. We need another center. They all leave in free agency. We've had Stastny. We've had Kevin Hayes. They didn't want to stay. Yes, you can pick up that center in this trade. So what I think there's just a mock trade. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I haven't heard any rumors about this either. But we're talking about the Winnipeg Jets trading Patrick Laine to the Buffalo Sabres in a package. It's got to be a package deal. You've maybe got to even throw a first-round pick in there if you want to get all these assets. But you've got to look at maybe a guy like Casey Middlestat, a Casey Middlestat-esque player, because I think Dylan Cousins will assert himself into that lineup next season because you've already got you've got guys down the middle there in Buffalo. I mean, you could throw Sam Reinhart down the middle. You've got Jack Eichel. And then you have Dylan Cousins. So do you really need Casey Middlestat at that point? I think he could become expendable. We talked about him maybe getting traded a couple of months back. So you're talking about Patrick Laine for Casey Middlestat and maybe one of those blue liners in Buffalo. And I think Rasmus Ristolainen would be the one, but it would take a lot more in a trade for Winnipeg than just Patrick Laine if they were to do that. I think a one-for-one Ristolainen for Patrick Laine could be interesting, but I just don't think the teams would want to do that. We've seen how teams have really got burned by those one-for-one trades. Eberle for Strome, Adam Larson for Taylor Hall. We've seen this story before, so I think teams are a little more careful. Maybe we see that one-for-one trade because we've seen it work before. PK Subban for Shea Weber. I think both teams are feeling pretty happy about that trade right now. Obviously, Subban's not even with the Nashville Predators at this point, but that's kind of how things go. So let me know in the comment section down below. Who did I miss on this trade bait board? Let me know in the comment section down below. And what do you think of my trade bait, my top 5? Let me know about that as well. And if you like what we're doing here at Goal Line Hockey, want to help us hit 500 subscribers, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and a subscribe down below. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.